Hello traders, Rich here and welcome to a new video. Today we are going to talk about supply and demand. What are supply and demand zones, how to identify the strongest ones, and of course how to trade it with extra confirmation. So let's get started. We have a demand zone when we have an explosive movement upward. That's a demand, and as price approaches it, we'll be looking for buy setups. And the opposite, when we have an explosive movement downwards, that's a supply, and as price approaches it, we'll be looking for what? For sell setups. And the stronger and the longer the move, the stronger the zone, right? So for example, this is a very strong demand area. And let me draw the length of it. So from here till here, right? And as you can see, the bullish candles are very, very aggressive. And here, the price made approximately the same movement. However, it's not a demand zone. It's not as strong. Because why? It's not as strong as this movement. It's very, very steep, while this one, as you can see, very, very choppy, and we've got many bearish candles in between, and we have these wicks from the upper side. So that's not a demand, while this is a typical and strong demand zone. And of course, the same applies for a supply zone. Now, we've got two types of demand and two types of supply. The first one is of a demand zone is a drop, base, and then rally, right? So drop, base, rally. So that's a demand. And the next one is a rally, base, rally. So rally, so which means upward movement, a base, and then rally. Okay, so that's also a demand zone. So we've got drop, base, rally, that's a demand, and rally, base, rally. And of course, exactly the opposite for a supply zone. For example, we've got a rally, base, drop, that's a supply, and I don't see an example for the drop, base, drop, so it's a drop, base, drop, so that's a supply, just like here, rally, base, and rally. Okay, so now you know the types of simple supply and demand and how to identify the strongest ones. Let's take a minute, I'll take a sip, take a minute and try to identify the strongest ones. I'll take one more, so take a minute. Fantastic, fantastic. You are right, absolutely right. This is because I told you about it, right? So this is a supply, a demand zone. That's the first one. So let's draw it, for example, in blue. Yes, let's do that. That's the first demand. Next, also, I told you about it. So that's a demand zone. It's a rally, base rally. And yes, that's one here. So can you find more? I personally can't see any demand areas, right? This one may be a strong one. Let me delete this one. This one may be a strong one, but it's not very, very strong because as you can see, we've got many movement. It's not like this one, poof, explosive movement upward, right? Poof, explosive movements. So this one is still strong, but not as strong as these. Okay, but anyway, that's why I'm mentioning it now, because this one is very, very old, right? So the older the zone, the weaker it becomes. So this one is still not old, it's still fresh, it's still new. And yes, you're right, this one is now old, so it's no longer considered valid. Okay, so we need it fresh. We need as many traders to see it. And why it's fresh? Because the banks, right, if for example, they've put their buy limits around here, since price didn't reach it for some time, and keep in mind that it's the daily time frame. So after a couple of months, they already delete their orders. Okay, and since we are mentioning the time frame, at least as per my trading style, I only draw supply and demand on daily and weekly time frames, right? And then I zoom into our time frames as price approaches it to look for buy setups. So many traders, they just draw the supply and demand on lower time frames, and they like to, for example, this is a demand from an H1, and they simply, when I see demand, they simply put their buy limit here, and then they put their stop loss on the other side. However, it's not a good, I personally don't like it, because the price can still go a little bit down before going up. right? So it can still kick us out before going up. So I always, as per my trading style, I always wait for extra confirmation and extra confirmation, even though I may enter late, for example, here and not exactly here. However, it would be with extra confirmation. So now these are the only demand zones. I can't see any big movement like these ones, right? We can't really see anything else. So this is a small one. This is a very small one. Small, right? So maybe this one is forming now. It's a good one, but again and again, the distance is not very big, like here and here, right? So these are the only demand zones. How about the supply zones? Take a minute and try to find a supply zone. Right? We don't have much. This is not a supply, as price didn't make an aggressive movement. The only supply in this picture is this one, as an aggressive movement downward, right? And it's a very small, not very typical, a drop base drop, right? So I instead will consider that this is the entire base, right? Because the drop base drop is this one is very small considered to this drop. So it's not like this rally base rally, right? So it's a rally base rally, or even we have an example here, which is this one, right? So it's not a rally base rally, right? So it's an entire base here. Okay. Anyway, this is all. Let's delete it, right? As mentioned before. So now let's take an example here. And yes, we also have, as mentioned, this one, which is an entire zone from here to here. So as price approaches this area, we'll be looking for sell setups. And so supply, demand. Let's take an example, and then we'll check another chart for another example. You can apply the same exact techniques for supply and demand on any instrument, whether it's a crypto, stock, index, and so on. Okay. So let's take an example. As price approaches this area, we'll do what? Or let me, before we're getting an example, yes, we do have one here. We have a supply here as well. The reason I'm mentioning this one, because as you can see, this one you would say, wow, it's very good. I'll start using it. It's not foolproof, okay? It's not foolproof. Don't ever, you will not find a holy grail in trading. So it's just, you find a strategy that will put the odds in your favor, right? And you put the odds in your favor by combining several tools, first, and second, by a positive risk to reward ratio. And that's what we're doing now. And of course, you can combine the supply and demand with trend lines, Fibonacci tracements, and so on. But this video will only focus on supply and demand. Okay? So the reason why I'm mentioning this is to know that supply and demand are not foolproof. So for those who enter immediately here, we'll put sell limits and stop loss here. Obviously, they will be kicked out. And let's take this example, and then take this example, and then we'll check another chart. So this example here, let's put on bar play, and click on here. So as price approaches the daily time, the daily demand, we'll zoom into lower time frames and look forward, as mentioned, for bar setups here. So it depends on your triggers, on your patterns, on your confluences. I personally use the classic ones, the double bottom, in this case, as it's a buy, a trend line, a pattern, any reversal bullish patterns. Okay, so let's keep it very simple here. Here we have a trend line that's not valid yet. So 1, 2, and we're waiting for a third swing, right? So let's click on play and see how we could have traded it. So now it's valid. So this is our trigger swing, what I call a trigger swing. I'm waiting for a break above it to buy. Then next, what happens? As you can see, for those who have put the stop loss here, they have been kicked out. Anyway, and yes, so now the price formed a new swing high. So that's our new trigger swing. And then I'll be waiting for a momentum candle close above it to buy. Right, and yes, that's it. So the entry would be here after momentum candle close. It depends on your trading style. Maybe you could enter before or after, I don't know. But I'm just trying to give you my personal approach. The stop loss would be below the previous swing low, for example, and it depends on your style when you put your stop loss. and I target a 2-to-1 reward ratio. Some traders would target the next resistance, what may be 3R or 4R. I don't know about your style, but let's say example for this video, I'll try to keep it as basic as possible, or as straightforward. So 2-to-1 reward ratio is an achievable and a positive risk to reward ratio. So you just target 2-to-1 risk to reward, and then you will wait for your stop loss, or you wait for your take profits. So let's take another example, and which is that could have been the stop loss, right? Which is obviously here. So this is the demand, and don't worry about finding the exact zone, because we are not entering sell immediately. So the traders who would like to find the exact zone are, for example, here it's a base and not a one candle demand zone, because it's as you can see, it's an entire base. So this is the area, and as price approaches, it will be looking for basket ups. For example, here it's the last bullish candle. So it's a supply, the price was going up, then boom, crash down. So the zone is not an entire base, it's a one bullish candle. So this is the zone. Some traders like to make it higher to cover the previous wick. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to enter immediately. Now let's do this one, and let's do bar play for here, right? So as per our trading style, we'll not sell immediately. We'll just wait for it to approach, right? To approach this area to look for reversal setups. And as you can see, higher highs, higher lows, higher lows, right? So we are in a bullish trend. We didn't sell yet, and obviously a new low. So this is the last low. Maybe you could have drawn a trend line here and waiting for a third swing to run out, then sell on spec downward, which, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, it didn't happen. So now when price broke this supply aggressively, then it's no longer valid. So now it's no longer valid. So we didn't enter a sell. That's the power of having extra confirmation. Even though some traders will consider it a late entry, but it is with extra confirmation, it will save you from many stop loss. So we didn't enter here, the price traded higher, from kept trading higher and higher. So now let's take another example on GBP CAD. Okay, so as usual, open the daily time frame and you try to find the explosive movements. We need it to be, as you can see here, we have a demand zone, explosive movement upward, right? It's a very steep, and look, many big bullish candles in a row. So here, as price approaches it, we'll zoom into H1 and look for what? For buy setups. So as you can see, not the wrong button, not this one, right? So lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. So we are still bearish, and we are looking for buy setups, as you can see. So now this is the last low, but I don't see that we can draw a trend line. This one is too steep. Anyway, it's not good, it's broken, and this is the last swing. Anyway, since let's say that you've drawn this one and you're waiting for this one to be broken, as you can see, it didn't happen, right? So even though if you are simply entering on the last low, high break upward, right, and you are keeping it simple, you didn't enter here because why? The price kept going down, and here the demand is no longer valid because price broke it downward. So that's how it's going to save you from bad trades or from supply and demand zones that price is not respecting. So this is, as you saw, didn't get activated. Next, take a minute and tell me if you can find any supply and demand zones. Very good. We've got many supply and demand zones here, right? And the best ones are what? Here we have a supply, right? Aggressive movement downward. Yes, here we have a supply also, aggressive movement downward. This one is a very strong one. And we even have a minor drop base, which is a very small candle, and price crashed. So this is also a supply zone. We could look for sell here, and here. And supply, where we have a supply, here we have a supply, price made an aggressive movement downward. So this is a supply, We could look for what? For sell setups around here. What else? Supply. I can't really find any new supply except this one, right? So let's make it in red for the supply. Yes, let's do it. So this is the supply. Because we took a demand example the last time on GBP, we'll take this example for supply on GBP CAD. But before do that, let's just find some demand zones here before we do the example, and then we will it will be the end of the video. So yes, we've got a big demand area here because we've got a big range. So it's a classic drop, base, and then rally. Do we have any more demand areas? This one is not as strong as the previous ones, right? So it's like because price went up, then choppy, right, before going up. So this is a demand because an aggressive movement up, but here price went choppy. So always look for the strongest ones, for the boof, right? What I call it, boof. Always remember the sound. Okay, so this is a demand. What else? This is not a demand. This is not a demand. It's an area. It's like a previous swing because it's from daily, so price may respect it. And now 1, 2, 3, we've got a support here, right? Anyway, let's focus on the supply and demand zones. And note, since we've mentioned it, supply and demand are not support and resistance. So sometimes it happens that, for example, we have a support here. It happens that, yes, we do have a demand here as we have an aggressive movement upward. It happens that we have a support and a demand, or a demand is formed around support, right? But it's not the same. A support, or let's take a resistance example. A resistance when we have many failed attempts to break above a zone, while for like 1, 2, 3, or at least 2 for some traders, while a supply zone is from one single untouched point. So like this, boof, right? Remember the sound? Okay, so one single untouched point for supply and demand, while it's a many failed attempts to break above or below for support and resistance. So next, now we've done the materials. Now let's take this example and we'll call it, and we'll finish the video. So as price approaches it, we'll zoom into lower time frames and look forward. And by the way, let's just adjust our supply zone. So it's the last green candle, right, which is here. And here it happens that the price got stuck inside this range. So it's an entire base. So the correct one is some traders like to make it like the last or the highest wick, and this is the supply zone. Okay. So now let's zoom into lower time frames and look for sell setups. As usual, you just look for the classic ones. Maybe you can draw this one. It's broken. It's not valid. Only only 2 touches. Maybe let's see if this one will get a third swing around it. Let's see. So no, the price broke it before forming a third swing around it because we've got, this is the first swing, this is the second swing because they are close to each other, and price broke it down. So it's not valid. Let's delete it. Let's find new reversal patterns. And obviously, if you can see it, we've got a head and shoulders pattern, right? So we've got the head, which is around here, and then we've got the, let me copy paste, yes. So we have the left shoulder, and here we have the right shoulder. So it's a typical head and shoulders pattern around a, so oops, I clicked on play. So around a supply zone. And here's the neckline. Let's make it in gray for the trigger as usual. And when the price breaks it with a momentum candle close, we will enter a sell. We didn't have a break yet. And we didn't have a break yet. Let's wait for it and boom. Okay, so we had the break here. And the stop loss above the right shoulder, right? And we target as usual a 2-to-1 reward ratio. Again and again, it depends on your trading style and so on. So target 2-to-1 reward ratio, and we'll see if it will hit our stop loss or our take profits. Always wait for extra confirmation and extra confirmation. Best of luck, and I'll see you on the next one.